Welcome to our Facebook talk about the pandemic we do every week or so. I'm joined today by Jamal Callahan, a former foster care youth, graduated from Mifflin High School in Columbus, leading advocate for improving foster care and the child welfare system in our state and really around the country. We can't allow children in foster care to fall through the cracks during this pandemic. We know families and young people are dealing with unprecedented financial stress, social isolation, abrupt changes to our daily lives. Child welfare agencies are worried about devastating cuts as Ohio and states across the country face severe budget shortfalls. That's why I introduced and worked with Mr. Callahan for the Child Welfare Emergency Assistance Act to provide flexible and emergency aid for key child welfare programs and to ensure they have the resources they need to continue protecting and supporting families during this public health crisis. We know that the pandemic has been the great revealer, revealing many of the problems that we face as a country, only worse now during this pandemic. Our bill would dedicate new flexible funding for state and tribal child welfare agencies, including $30 million for kinship navigator programs. We know that many grandparents, and this is before the pandemic, and other family members are raising children in Ohio. These families face unique challenges before the pandemic, and now the public health crisis obviously makes it worse. Grandparents are often some of the most at risk from the virus. You think about they're facing impossible choices. They try to balance raising children, taking care of their own health, and in many cases, these grandparents who are raising children are essential workers, in moderate and low income workers, but key people to us as a country. These families, the kinship navigators is especially important too. Our bill would help states implement plans to ensure children in foster care are up to date on vaccinations and have access to health care and telemedicine. It would require states to develop and implement what we call de-escalation strategies that limit unnecessary involvement with law enforcement. It would establish a moratorium on aging out of foster care during this pandemic. We hear too many stories of 18-year-olds that are just aged out and cut out and have to face all the problems that they face because they're now no longer living in foster care. We're in the middle of a crisis unlike anything we've ever seen. We call on Leader McConnell to schedule this for a floor vote, to debate this, to discuss this, to move on this. The House of Representatives is interested in this. We need to move in the Senate. Senator McConnell said he sees no urgency. There's urgency, as you'll know from what Mr. Callahan says. There is urgency on this issue and so many other things we need to do on housing, on education, on healthcare. So, Mr. Callahan from Columbus, Ohio, nice to see you.
Thank you, Senator Brown, for having me. Just to reiterate, my name is Jamal Callahan. I am the Director of Training and Development for Action Ohio and the National Center for Housing and Child Welfare, and I'm an independent contractor. And I've been doing this for over 22 years, and I've provided professional training and a listening ear to child welfare workers, foster parents, and kinship caregivers, and foster youth throughout the state of Ohio and across the nation. I'm also a product of Ohio's foster care system. I was in care for 6 years, and I emancipated or aged out when I was 18 to be on my own. But I've decided for my career to improve the quality of life for America's foster youth and foster parents and kinship who open their homes to protect children when their own parents cannot. The foster care system is a complex continuum of prevention resources and foster homes and kinship care and adoption and services for older youth who reach adulthood without family at all. In the face of COVID-19, every aspect of the system is overstretched, and the 16,000 children in foster care in Ohio and their brothers and sisters nationwide are feeling this stress. It is an honor to have this opportunity to thank you, Senator Brown, for the Child Welfare Emergency Assistance Act. And this comprehensive bill reflects the immediate and terrifying reality families and youth and child welfare face due to this pandemic and everything that's associated with this economic shutdown. Throughout this pandemic, Senator Brown, you and your staff have been in constant contact with not only youth and families, but you've been in contact with child welfare leaders to figure out exactly what this crisis looks on the ground. This isn't unusual for you and your staff. Your staff routinely seeks the input from the Ohio Youth Advisory Board, and you speak directly with youth facing homelessness and destitution as they were displaced from either jobs, dorms, or even their foster homes. This bill is a clear indication that you, sir, listen and incorporate all of our input. Input that has been largely ignored by other COVID packages. Now, Governor DeWine has since put a mandatory moratorium for youth aging out of care, which we think, but you've put this in the package and it helps youth not age out of care at 18 during this COVID-19. Now, youth will have the option to stay in extended foster care through September of 2022. For those youth who choose independence, you have put in place an increased federal program designed to move youth using the John H. Chafee to Independence Act, and to increase from 145 billion to 500 million, which what we see on the ground is that states and counties run out of Chafee dollars literally every year as we increase the population that we are serving. But this fund is flexible and the availability is nationwide. Now, it can be used for whatever these young people need in order to move them towards independence. It's flexible and it meets the needs in this unprecedented challenge. So I'm grateful again for you, Senator Brown, for listening to the voices of current and former foster youth and crafting the Child Welfare Emergency Assistance Act. Has as its current resources, and it increases current resources that we have in federal programs to give us a platform to rebuild the lives and the skills for youth aging out of foster care. So we thank you. Well,
Mr. Callahan, thank you. And when we write bills like this, we go to the experts, and Shai in my office and Lee in my office tell me you're one of the most important experts to them to help figure out how to do this, because we have talented people in my office, but it's people like you, that the activists and that have done this for, as you said, more than 2 decades. And when you talked about being overstretched, that's what this pandemic has done. It has really shown the racial disparities to all of America that much of America knew about, but all of America now should be able to understand the racial disparities and the overstretched public services, especially in the area of child care and child welfare. So thank you very much, Mr. Callahan, Jamal Callahan, for doing that. We will continue to work together until we make this
we will.
law. You're on. Thank you.
Thank you.